Everybody likes a good rumba. And I think that's because it's in 4/4 time, which is a more palatable, accessible rhythm for the Western ear, let's say. There's a lot of Spanish guitar stuff with very esoteric rhythms, certainly in flamenco where we're counting to 12. And we have these oddly dispersed accents, a little bit harder to listen to for some people and to get into, and certainly even to dance to. So the rumba is great. It's definitely something that we want to be good at and always getting better at. So in this video, I want to give you as many tips as I can on how to improve your rumba playing. Hey, stay tuned to the end of this video where after these tips, I'm going to show you everything you shouldn't be doing when you play a rumba. My first tip might seem kind of obvious, but we absolutely need to obey the accents and really be heavy on a certain accent. So check out this rhythm. So there we had a tie over the third beat, all 8 notes. Millions of songs have exactly that rhythm. It's not really a rumba, but it fits into the rumba scheme because that tie over the third beat kind of gives us a de facto accent on the and of 2. We went 1 and 2 and without hitting that accent harder, we almost get a phantom accent because that blank spot kind of calls attention to what we just heard. But that doesn't really sound very rumba-esque, does it? 1 and 2. I'm playing everything with the exact same intensity. What we want to shoot for in a rumba, above all, is an accent on the and of 2. 1 and 2 and that's exactly where that tie begins. That's tied over into the third beat. What we need to do is absolutely hit that harder. And in a perfect world, we would have an accent on the 1, on the and of 2, and the 4. So let's try to hit those accents a little harder. 1 and 2 and 4. So I'm hitting the strings harder. 1 and 2 and 4. So that is step 1 to playing a good rumba, is obeying those accents, especially the and of 2. Hit that one harder. And if we didn't hit the other accents, at least the and of 2 is definitely going to give us more of that rumba sound that we want. There's so many more things that we can do, as we'll talk about here, but definitely have an accent on the and of 2. 90% of this rumba stuff is in the right hand, obviously. But my next tip is to see if we can incorporate the left hand to make things sound more dynamic. The main thing we can do with our left hand is string muting to make things sound more percussive and cool. So if I take an A minor chord, lay my pinky over these strings and relax the other fingers, I can whack it like that. Even better would be to use a bar chord so that you can simply relax to get that percussive sound. And now we can take that same rhythm and do this. I'm just relaxing on the second beat. 1 and... See if you can do that on a progression like a 1, 4, 5 and A minor. A minor. It's hard to mute with the left hand when you have open chords. And then E or E7, back to A minor. Just gonna use my index finger and do the same rhythm we did. Now what if I muted everything except for that accent on the and of 2? So we have a much more heavy and kind of rockin' sound by doing that, and it's all achieved by the left hand. I was doing the exact same rhythm, rumba pattern that I did at the very beginning, and just by relaxing we can get that sound. And it's more dynamic in the sense of we have that percussive whack of the strings, and then we have the chord. So we have 2 elements now within that rhythm. The next tip is to use different fingers on your right hand. So I know at the beginning I just used the index finger. We could use our thumb as well. But things sound the best when we mix those up, and every finger has its own ambience to it. You know, we have a lot of control and maybe even power in that index finger. The thumb is more fleshy, and still a lot of power there. Another thing you can do is take your middle and ring fingers, squeeze them together. You see that in a lot of Spanish guitar playing, and by doing that we have more surface area than we would have on a single finger, and we can really get a lot of power out of that. So let's take that pattern and use our thumb, our index, and these 2. Down with my thumb, up with my thumb, down with the ring and middle, up with the thumb on that accent. Sit your thumb down as good stability there, I think is a good policy. And then with your index finger, up, down, up. The last 3 eighth notes or 3 strokes in a rumba measure are almost always just going to be your index. Not a really heavy accent there. Hit it a little bit harder on the 4, like I was saying. You could use any finger that you want, really, but that's mainly what people do at the end of the measure. They just kind of finish it off with up, down, up with the index finger. See, I'm hitting that because you have a lot of power in your thumb. We can really get a nice loud accent on that really important and of 2 accent. Let's combine that with some of that left hand muting, and this time we'll mute on the last 3 strokes, so and 4 and. We'll go. I think that sounds pretty cool. That leads me to my next tip, which is more of a general guitar rule for strumming, and that is leave early to the next chord, don't be late. So that's really hard for people changing chords, I know. I'm going from A minor to F, let's say like this, right? We want to go 1 and 2 and 4 and be there on the 1. Obviously, intellectually we all know that, but getting from one chord to the next takes a little bit of time, and even the untrained ear can hear when you're late, but if you leave early they can't tell, and look what happens. See, I took extra time there to get to the chord. I went 1 and 2 and, took the chord off, and 4 and then I went to F. So you might think that that's cheating, and we don't really have to get that drastic about it and do it for a full 3 strokes. But by doing that, at least in keys that allow open strings, like I'm in the key of A minor here, it actually adds some harmonic complexity to what you're doing, believe it or not. Those 3 open strings are not even in the 2 chords I'm playing, so we get the sound of a G chord there, just by happenstance. So that actually is more complicated harmonically and easier for us technically. If you're playing bar chords, this perfectly dovetails with what I was saying about the percussive muting thing. You actually can give yourself time to get to the chord in a leisurely way and create a cool percussive effect, and it sounds like you're doing it on purpose. Watch. So I gave myself a lot of time to get to the next chord. And it actually sounds like more is happening, and more is happening. It's just easy for us, so why not make it easier and more complicated when we can? One thing that you'll see a lot of expert Rumba players do is play a downstroke where we normally would play an upstroke, and you guessed it, on the and of 2 where that huge accent is. So normally our guitar kind of rule for strumming is going to be down on the numbers and up on the ands. That doesn't always have to be the case. That's a good general rule though, I think, because the heavy beats generally are going to be on the downs, and it just works out perfectly for the physics of guitar. We're playing down on strong beats. Upstrokes usually are kind of lighter by nature, so we're playing in places where typically are not as accented, so it makes sense. But here it would be great to go down on the and of 2. Let's try it. 1 and 2. Just for extra volume, I'm using the middle and the ring, squeezing them together on the and of 2. With my thumb, I went 1 and then my index on the 2, just to get ready for this downstroke. I'm going down with a thumb, up with a thumb, a light downstroke with my index. See, one de facto way of getting accents is by being lighter on things that aren't an accent. You don't have to slam an accent as hard as you can, as long as you're being lighter on what isn't an accent. 1 and 2 and. Take the second beat out altogether. Now, up until now, I've been playing kind of loudly, really strumming pretty hard. But another way to play a rumba, or to achieve a rumba without strumming, is to do this. So we can insert that between our strums, or even have a whole section where we just do that. And it's still a rumba, and it's actually even almost, you could say, more of a rumba in some ways. We're really hearing the 3-3-2 idea there, which is another way of saying what I did at the beginning. We need an accent on the 1, on the and of 2, and the 4. And if you counted to 3, and count to 3 again, and count to 2, you'll be getting those accents on the number 1 every time, like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Let's take a strumming rumba. And then I think that's a cool way to mix up your patterns and make things sound more interesting. Now, we've already created a percussive sound by muting the strings, but as you know, there's many more ways that we can hit the guitar, and one of them would just be simply a slap like this. I like to do this snare hit thing, where we hit the strings and immediately kill it. Sounds kind of like a snare drum, at least to me. But there's many other ways, of course. You could take the side of your thumb, hit it here, as I'll show you in a second. And as we move around the guitar, we'll get different sounds, a little bit more bassy down here, and a little more high pitched there. You can even knock your knuckles as if you're knocking on a door on the fretboard here, on the strings. And see if you can, inside of those 4 beats, kind of squeeze those in. As long as you're not walking on top of the accents, you can build your own Rumba pattern and something that feels good to you. So let's take an F chord here. F major 7, sharp 11 to be exact. Scary name, but just an easier way of playing an F chord without having to bar it here. Let's trim that Rumba pattern down into only 3 things, the accents that we want. And on the first beat, we'll just do this side hit with our thumb. I'm kind of driving this from my wrist a little bit. Make sure it's nice and loud. And then on the and of 2, we're going to play whatever fingers you want. I'm using middle and ring at the same time. And then on the 4, we'll just do an upstroke with whatever finger you like. Okay? Sounds like this. On the upstroke there, on the 4, now I'm going up where we normally would go down. So we're switching the direction there. You can do up with your index finger or up with your thumb. I think up with your index finger makes more sense because we can prepare our thumb to do that hit again. So we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Or if we want to count 3-3-2 style, we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Maybe that sounds really cool and moody. So my tip here as it pertains to percussive sounds is throw in different percussive sounds. We can do it within the same measure. We can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I hit my thumb on the 1 and I slap on the 4. And we can slap so many different ways. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Or we can start adding some of those 8th notes back in. Another thing you can do to introduce some dynamism into things is to not always strum and instead play the root or the low note in the chord. So we got E minor here. We can go. Takes a little more dexterity and targeting just of that single note with the thumb. Great for your technique. One thing that can trip us up are chords that don't involve all 6 strings, and that can mess us up. So if we have a C chord, we don't want to hear this low E string, weirdly, because E is in a C chord, but it sounds bad if we have that in the bass there. But what we can do is play all 6 strings. So think of notes that you can add so that we can hit all the strings, and then we can have maximum whackage and hit all the strings without having to adjust our right hand and try to only hit 5 strings. Of course, you can then bring your thumb over, which is a bad habit if you always do that, or if you're not able to get it like this, or even have a finger come over here and touch that string. But I prefer to just play as many strings as possible. You don't have to hit them all, but then you have the insurance of having those fingers down. And that's why in Spanish guitar, instead of this B7, you see this so often down there, so we can hit all the strings. And that F sharp note is already in the chord. A lot of times we'll just take the pinky off. We already got the F sharp right there. And that's kind of why that chord exists in a lot of flamenco stuff, so we can hit all the strings. See what I did right there was another percussive effect, a golpe, doing that with a thumb downstroke at the same time on the first beat. Okay, the last Rumba tip is to throw in rasgueos wherever you can. And this is where things can really start to sound cool. We don't want to walk over the accents, like I keep saying, but we can use this normal traditional one, this 4-stroke, where we go pinky, ring, middle, index, and we can throw that in so many places. Doing that same strum that we did at the very beginning of this lesson, going down, up, waiting on the 3, and then up, except just throw in this right after the first stroke. 1, 2. So we're landing on the 2 at the end of that rasgueo. 1, 2, and 4. Let's throw in a slap on the 4. If you're able to do the triplet rasgueo, this thing, we're going up with the thumb, down with the middle, and down with the thumb. You can throw that in, if you can, in different places in the rumba as well. See, I was tapping there on the 4th beat. That's where we were slapping before. So many things to experiment with here. Different taps and slaps, different places that you can really bring out the accent and experiment with different ways of playing the rumba. Okay, what are some things not to do when you play a Rumba? I think the number one mistake that I see people make is playing as if you had a pick in your hand. So when you are playing with a pick, a lot of people cross over, you know, from playing steel string or electric with a pick. And so they're used to some things that are normal for that world. And we just have to kind of refine them and change a couple of things. So when you're strumming with a pick, we move more from the wrist like this. And that means we have to kind of push our wrist out in order to turn. We want to keep our wrist straight in so many things here. When we're strumming, our fingers just work better when our wrist is straight. My wrist is straight there. I am doing some turning like this, but it's not coming from this flexing forward or certainly not backward with my wrist. Sometimes you'll see my wrist come out, and that's when I'm doing maybe the thumb only, because I'm not using the other fingers, just the thumb for that moment, and then I'm back to having a straight wrist. So you bent just a little bit on my wrist, and I'm back. Another super bad habit is moving from the elbow, and this goes for even if you are strumming with a pick on a steel string or whatever. When we first learn guitar, we think that we need to go like this, and maybe because we see a bunch of music videos where they're strumming like this. Keep in mind, on a music video, do they still have music videos? They're playing to a recording of it, they're making things look very dramatic. Okay, you might do that at the end of a song, and you know, for a nice dramatic flourish or something. But the faster you go, the more incredibly impossible it is to move from your elbow, and the more you're going to hurt yourself and get stuck in the strings even. So when you go really fast in a Rumba or anything, notice my elbow isn't moving at all. So you really need to divorce that movement from your elbow. I see it happening, and sometimes when we appear to be doing the right thing, I can see in some people's elbows where they have this kind of pent-up motion because they're still trying desperately to drive it from the elbow, but it needs to all happen right here in the fingers and in this turning of the wrist, but with a straight wrist. I hope these Rumba tips really help you bring your Rumba strumming alive and give you more ideas and all the different things that we can do. You don't have to obey what's on the page. Don't get hung up on exactly what fingers you're using in the right hand. Whatever's written there on the page can certainly be altered if you're reading from a book. Now in this video, we're just talking about strumming chords, right? But I think the most fun we can have with a Rumba is where we have melodies in between strumming those Rumba patterns. So check out this video where we take 3 chords and a scale, and I try to get you to make your own Rumba. Do you want to play more Rumbas? Sure, we all do. And did you know that at the low price of just 0 cents a day, you could improve your Rumbas just by watching this video?